All right. Welcome, Tom, to episode, I think, 23 of the Roosters Crow podcast, all the way from Melbourne, Australia. Welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Yeah, good brother. Thanks for having me on. I like your little. I just noticed your little rooster post over there.
Yeah, he's helping guide me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you agreed to come on. It's funny, I've been a lot of different things happening right now. They're just strange and interesting. And I've been following your channel for a few years. I was heavily into the kind of psychedelia and Alan Watts and, heavily into Alan Watts, Terrence McKenna, um, a lot of those kind of folks on the internet as they were coming to the fold after like 2010, really after 2012. It seems like maybe the world really did end in 2012 because things changed dramatically and shifted. And I came upon your channel and really good production and an interesting guy. You're very, people are drawn to you, and I like your content. And just recently, I've seen some, you kind of getting into the orthosphere and having some conversations there. And I'm really interested in trying to discern what's happening as so many people are finding orthodoxy, this ancient faith, across the world that I've been talking to. So we'll get into all of that. But I wanted to just hear kind of about your background. Are you originally from Melbourne, and what was it like growing up there?
Yeah. I also find it very interesting that more and more people are finding orthodoxy. It definitely seems to be a good trend, especially people going into the whole psychedelic world and not really finding. I get it. I definitely understand. Yeah, I was born in Melbourne, Australia, and I kind of got into the YouTube space. Yeah, around, like you said, around 20. No, it was a bit later, maybe 2015. But I remember 2012. I think that was roughly when I first had my psychedelic experience. So it's interesting that you say it was like kind of the end of the world, but definitely like a new era, the kind of
Mm-hmm.
new age spirituality kind of getting more and more popular. And yeah, I had this very life changing ayahuasca experience. I was very depressed, addicted to drugs, and just lost, man. I didn't know what else to do. And I guess ayahuasca was just something that I heard from the Joe Rogan experience, and it just called to me. I think after listening to people like Aubrey Marcus and Graham Hancock and hearing their experiences, and it just really piqued my interest. And I've had a little bit of experience with psychedelics before then, but ayahuasca was like that first life changing experience, you know? And yeah, it was a life changing experience. But the first time I did it, it was very dark and horrific, and I actually almost left the retreat.
Mm-hmm.
But the shaman and the facilitators, they strongly recommended that I stayed, and it was kind of like my ego backlash and all
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff, and that I should trust and surrender. I'm sure you hear these words a lot. Just
Mm-hmm.
trust, surrender, man. It's okay. Don't worry about it. But that being said, I am glad I continued that retreat because the second ceremony was like polar opposite. Like the classic one with the universe. I understand everything.
Mm-hmm.
My suffering has meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Traveling the cosmos, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, and after that, it changed my personality in a lot of ways. It was more that it just kind of removed all the bullcrap, like all that depressed, anxious, insecurity, which of course did come back later, but at least at the beginning, it kind of gave me a little glimpse of freedom in a sense. And yeah, and then shortly after, I basically started a YouTube channel just talking about my experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's been. I'm sure there's many directions we can go from here, but that's basically how it started.
Well, if you don't mind, can we go back a little bit further in terms of, so were you raised in the city or outside of the city?
I was raised outside the city, like
Okay.
still technically in Melbourne City, but so far away that I lived what we call the sticks, the hills. So it was
Mm-hmm.
like the Amazon rainforest, basically.
Okay, so not
Because
like the suburbs, right? Like
it
outside of the
was
suburbs, yeah.
it was the suburbs, but it was more very. But it's not the suburbia that you're used to, like you see in the movies and stuff. It was
Mm-hmm.
very hilly and mountainous and a lot of nature, and I was
Hmm.
very close to like the edge of the city. And
Yeah.
I remember actually even going to the Amazon rainforest, and people were like so amazed, like, "Oh, this is amazing!" I'm like, "Dude, this is like my backyard."
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
took it for granted, I guess. But now, since I've moved out, yeah, it's a beautiful place. So technically, it is the suburbs, but
Yeah.
very dense with nature and forests and wildlife and all that kind of stuff.
What kind of did you have like a few close friends that lived near you, or friends from school? What was that kind of like? Let's say when you're in elementary school, a little bit past that too.
Uh, I don't really remember because we have like primary school and high school. We just cut into two. But
Mm-hmm.
in high school, I remember, yeah, I had a few friends live somewhat close, but this was kind of like my delinquent years. So
Mm-hmm.
just like drinking, smoking, graphing, graffiti, breaking into places, like
Mm-hmm.
naughty boy kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's I had a similar upbringing. Got in a lot of trouble. Actually, the only reason I applied to college was to get off a felony probation. Just completely lost. And a lot of people that I talk, no matter where they're from, Norway, Sweden, Australia, they go through this process of having a difficult childhood in a seemingly not so difficult place across the world, across the globe, in different countries, different nations, but they have this same kind of underlying, going through addiction and whatnot. What do you think drew you or brought you to addiction early on?
There was just a kind of rebellious nature within me. And I remember on the first week or two of high school, seeing like the bad kids smoke cigarettes in the toilet. I'm like, I want to be friends with those guys.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought they were cool. I don't know. It was just even just growing up watching movies like, for example, that's one of my favorite movies of all time. I really identified with John Connor, that sort of that kid who kind of has lack of a father. And my father was there. I don't want to say we're all good now, but kind of emotionally speaking, I kind of lack that presence. You know what I mean? So I guess it was sort of like a rebellion against the father archetype, I guess
Mm-hmm.
you could say. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was just something that I really resonated with, and I started hanging out with the bad kids, and it was like an adventure. I don't know. It was just something cool and new, and I just got attracted to that and started, smoking cigarettes, and then pretty soon after it was weed, and
Mm-hmm.
then alcohol, and over time that just kind of escalated and escalated to the point where you're like 20 years old and you're like, dude, what am I doing with my life? This is crazy. Like, when you like, I don't know, for example, you're out in the underworld
Mm-hmm.
and you're like messed up on drugs or whatever it is, but then you have like the moment of clarity, and then you really see where you are for what it is, and it scares the crap out of you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had kind of a few of those kind of moments, but at the beginning it was all fun and games.
Yeah. Lots of fun and games. And I wonder where that flash comes from and why it doesn't come to everyone. So I had there was a lot of drugs that came through. I in high school drinking and smoking, nothing serious, some weed, and then got into ecstasy, and then just this like storm of opiates flowed into Florida, like just
Oh wow.
flowed in, and there was massive addiction. I was addicted to opiates for many years. I lost many friends. Just recently, I lost my best friend 2 years ago. A lot of people that didn't get out of it. It's been
Mm.
15 years since I was kind of in that, but a lot of my friends, lots of them, I mean, over a dozen of close friends have passed. And just recently, they weren't able to kick the addiction, and fentanyl has now taken place of the more less lethal opiates, and they're dying left and right. And it's so strange and terrible that that's happened. And I don't know why I got out of it. And, my best friend and his cousin just passed recently. Why I'm just grateful and thankful that that happened. But and that's what kind of came to mind when you talked about you had a flash of insight of in the middle of the muck of what are you doing? I wonder where that comes from. If that's like a psychological thing, or if that's like a guardian angel or some kind of
Mm.
force that we're not aware of. That's like gives you a little bit of a push there. But anyways, it's a little bit of a side, and you don't have to go. You can go into as much detail as you like here. What were your parents like? Were they religious? Were they kind of working folks? What were they like?
So I had two like immigrant parents. One, my mother's from Chile, and
Hmm.
my dad is from Poland
Hmm.
and very old. So they're like completely different worlds,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
could say. And yeah, dad was kind of, he was like very, he was actually always like very strict with his health and into his conspiracy theories. And we're like, ah, yeah, shut up, dad, whatever. And of course, now when you're old, you're like, oh my god, you were right about so many things. But mum was basically, because they split up very early on, so I feel like for the majority of it, it was basically just my mum raised me by herself for the most part. Like he was there, but and she was religious, but not strongly religious. It was more our grandmother that was
Hmm.
super religious, like devout Catholic, going to church every Sunday, praying every day. And I think mum just kind of, she identifies as a Christian, but I don't even think she's ever read the Bible in her life. She
Hmm.
never goes to church, so she's definitely not a practicing Christian. So I didn't
Hmm.
really learn about that at home, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, more resonances. So my parents, my mom was essentially pregnant with me when they both moved from Greece, and the Greek immigrants. They moved here late 70s, and kind of came here and worked restaurants and got divorced when I was probably in like maybe 11 years old. And I took that really hard. Now that I look back on it, it was a really strong effect on my personality and a lot of different things.
Mm.
Or I felt the shift happen like in fifth and sixth grade, and then shortly after, 2, 3 years later, I got heavily into partying and kind of drinking and drugging and wiling out and sleeping with different girls. All it's just the cool thing to do. Culture tells you that's the cool thing to do, so you're going to get
Of
kind of drawn to
course.
that too. So
Yeah.
interesting. We're both kind of first generation immigrants, children of immigrants. In my so half of my family from this part of Greece, half came to America in Massachusetts and Florida. The other half went to Melbourne, actually, interestingly, and I think another part of Australia. So I got a lot of cousins
Oh wow.
there, in a sense, that I don't know very well. But I'm trying
Oh
to,
nice.
yeah, I found them on Facebook, and we've been talking. I'm trying to find some more information about, my family, like in Greece from 50, 100 years ago. And like, well, I have no idea. Um, here in America, or maybe you're in the same boat. It's pretty easy to find your lineage and your grandpa, and goes back, and people that came in through Ellis Islands, and they get all this rich information of their family history. And I've got literally nothing from before my grandparents, actually. So I've been trying to kind of track that down. But yeah,
Yeah.
so definitely resonances with there as well.
I don't
So
have any I don't have any information on my grandparents either. I
yeah,
think my dad's father passed away before I was born, and then my mum's father, who knows? I don't even know if
yeah,
he's dead or alive. Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah,
Like where you're talking about how people have all this rich history of their family, and I'm like, I have no
definitely.
idea. So of course, so looking back, of course, it makes sense that I was like so lost in the world and wanted to fit in
Yeah,
and had that rebellious nature and got pulled into drugs, I guess.
yeah.
But one thing that I did like about even like the delinquents that I was hanging out with, at least they were real because there were a lot of fake people at school. Like yeah, they were delinquents, but at least they were the same no matter who they were hanging out with. And I think
Hmm.
that's sort of honesty I appreciated because
Yeah.
it's very rare to find like genuine honesty. You know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah, and you're drawn to that when you find it, whether you're aware of it
Mm.
or not at the time. And it's interesting. It's like I think maybe it's a very recent phenomenon to be so uprooted, and historically to be so uprooted from a place and a time, and to be schlepped into a new world and just try to make do with it. It's a really kind of strange thing. You're kind of without a place and just trying to find yourself, um, and then with no real traditions to fall back on. Like my folks, my grandma was really the only one that brought me to church. She didn't speak any English, and I went to church with her until maybe 9, 10, 11 years old, and then we stopped going completely. But there's nothing,
Mm.
there's no tradition to be rooted in. There's no real place that you're familiar with, that you come from, and it's all like economic based, and you're kind of just flung into the world in this strange, chaotic place, trying to make do. And I think that same situation. Like my dad and I are great, and when they got divorced, my dad was still around, but I lived with my mom, right? And she was a single mom working, and so I really didn't have that kind of that father figure. So no tradition, no community, no real father figure. You're kind of just left blowing in the
Mm.
winds. So no matter what, no wonder why you kind of get caught up in these things. I also see this
Yeah.
idea of the father figure has been effaced from the globe, right? From the patriarchy and all these ideas of toxic masculinity, and whether there are aspects of masculinity that become toxic, and those have been amplified, at least in the media and in our world. But I see this idea of with the absence of the father in the family being akin to the absence of God the Father in the world, right?
Oh
Which
yeah.
is it's just causing this strange circumstance to kind of what that we're in now. But um, it's also presenting opportunities to meet people and to kind of refine what it is to be masculine. What is masculinity? And I was really heavy into feminism. I went to school for philosophy and political science, and I still am. I mean, I'm totally for equality for women. They should be treated, equally, if not better, right, than men. Like I'm really all about that. But it seems like things have been flipped, and the thing that is, you know, that is sacred about the feminine has been lost, and now we're holding up this toxic femininity where it's like the feminine has
Mm.
now become this warped masculine that was the problem, and it's
Oh
like they
yeah.
just it's been inculcated into that, and it's like it's really strange, a
Oh,
strange.
dude, you would love Melbourne then.
Yeah.
It's so hard. It's like very socialist, feminist, sorry, vegan, like hardcore,
Hmm.
very ultra left here. Like they even spent millions of dollars in tax money to change the traffic light so that it's like a woman wearing a dress
Hmm.
instead of a.
Yeah.
I brought it up to my fiance that it's funny because that's like inherently sexist because that would assume that a woman has to wear a dress to be a woman, and it kind of goes against their own movement. So it's just yeah, it's
Yeah.
like a snake eating its own tail, man. You just got to like sit back and they'll just destroy themselves, I guess. But it's a
Yeah.
sad kind of state that we've been in.
So this idea just dawned on me a couple days, like in the last couple days, and I don't know how to articulate it without sounding terrible. But like we always thought that if women ruled the world, what would happen if women ruled the world? We wouldn't have wars, we'd have peace. And it's like, well, we're seeing what happens when the feminine rules the world, right? And we're stuck in this hyper safety focused, the worst parts of femininity or the devouring mother, whether or not there's a male or a female in
Mm.
office, like that is what's manifesting. So I watched a video, Dave Rubin, you probably know him, he's a YouTuber, and he
Yeah.
just yesterday released a video talking about what's happening in Sydney, and I think it was New Zealand, and both are run by women, which I'm sure are nice people. But I think it was in Sydney, there was 83,000 cases, 83,000 tests on COVID tests, and out of the 83,000 tests, there were 111 positives, and out of all of that, one person died. An 80-year-old man died. Right, because of those numbers, they shut down businesses. Construction workers aren't allowed to go to work, and then you can't leave. I forgot what city, like what part of the city it was. You can't leave your house or even the city, even for work.
Yeah. Well,
So
dude,
just
here we even have less cases, and it's
mm,
5 kilometers. I'm in lockdown right now. There was like a huge protest yesterday, actually, which I
yeah,
wish I knew about. But yeah, it's insane, man. Like we have like the lowest cases, I'm pretty sure, worldwide, maybe except for New Zealand. But we have like the absolute strictest laws. Businesses are shutting down. My mother, she doesn't get paid when
hmm
her shop closes down, and yeah, it's been absolutely insane. I think a lot of I don't know. It's hard to say. It's like I know it's very controversial to talk about this topic, but it seems that the solution is like more dangerous than the problem itself. They're just going way too far. In a
yeah,
country like again, we have like such low cases, and I guess one could argue that because we've been so strict, therefore that's why the cases are so low. So there is that side of the argument too. But
yeah,
yeah, it's just tough when you have to get locked down over and over and over again because it's
yeah.
been like what a year and a half and we still haven't been able to even leave the country. And they're thinking about doing the mandatory vaccines and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Scary times, bro.
it's tricky, and it's very very scary times, and it's like it seems like the second and third order effects of putting these measures in place, the addiction, the depression, the anxiety, the lack of work, the breakdown of the economy, the breakdown of the
Mm,
social fabric of the city and the state and the country and the nation, right, is poignant, and it's obvious. But the idea is like, but we have to minimize the impact and the deaths from the coronavirus. But the impact, the second and third order impacts, are gravely more impactful and way more harsh than God. We don't want anybody to die, but people die all the time, and there's risks in life. Like, this is what I mean. Like there's a risk. The masculine, and I don't mean men. I mean the masculine is more risk tolerant, right, and the feminine is more risk averse. And
mm,
now with this virus coming through, it's like there's no risk, and the measures that are in the impact of the measures that are put in place are profound. We had the highest level of opiate overdose deaths in our country last year, almost 100,000 deaths. So
wow.
a fifth of the deaths that happened from COVID happened alone from, from overdose deaths. And child depression and anxiety, the child suicide rate for 10, 11, 12-year-old girls is up 200%.
Wow.
Businesses,
Since
hundreds of,
the lockdown.
yeah, well, this has been a
Wow.
trend for the last decade, but it's
All right.
increased
Yep.
since the lockdown with kids. I think in generally, in a weird sense, it was down, across the board. But the effect this is having on our children is profound. And then I'm fighting. Our kids had to have masks on. I have three kids: a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And my 6-year-old had to have a mask on all day at school with all of his friends. And it's cool, a couple of weeks, we don't know what this thing is. Let's figure it out. Let's all, band together. But to prolong it over 8 months, to me, it just seems like, oh my God, that there's, the kids don't spread it. There's no evidence that the kids are vectors of transmission. They don't get sick from it, let alone die. I think there's been maybe not even one child that died from it out of all of the deaths here. There's 350 in
Mm,
total, but a lot of them were really compromised leukemia type children that had these underlying conditions. And just in general, the people that get sick and die from this thing are older. They have multiple comorbidities. We know who they are. Now that we know who they are, we can put measures in place to protect them. But we're sacrificing everything to protect a group of people that we don't have to do that. We're sacrificing our children and their health to protect old sick people.
yep.
And instead of looking at the mistakes that were made over the last year of lockdowns, it's not necessarily logical that those work in the first place.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
it's
like,
like lack of honesty too, man. I think that if it really was about health, then why not take this opportunity to teach everybody about boosting their immune system, or maybe not selling candy everywhere with colorful animals to children. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's
mm-hmm,
no congruency, because like now they're all about like, yeah, we care about your health and safety. It's like, no, you don't.
yeah,
That does makes no sense. Otherwise, you'd be doing all these measures to actually help us be healthier. But you're just
yeah,
dividing us, and it's just more conflict and division and breaking apart the family even more, and isolation and all that kind of stuff. And I don't mean to be like necessarily pessimistic about this, but it's also seeing the pattern of just the lack of transparency. And it's like, oh, now all of a sudden you care about our health.
mm-hmm,
I find it hard to believe. But
yeah,
yeah, we're in this spot now, and I want to travel, dude. I've been stuck here for ages. I want to travel, but I also don't want to get the vaccine
mm-hmm.
either. So it's like I'm in a bind, dude. What do I do?
Yeah, same boat. So what's it like there in terms of the vaccine from, is it really a social pressure that's happening for people to get it? Is it available, first of all, kind of everywhere?
I'm pretty sure it is available, but I think Australia is we have one of the lowest percentage of people actually getting the vaccine, which is
Hmm.
really good. It makes me proud to be
Yeah.
Australian. But they're also thinking about rolling it out, the mandatory vaccines, and they're going to make it very difficult. So they might even eventually they might even be like, all right, we're not going to make it mandatory, but if you want to go to the cinemas, if you want to go to school, if you want to do this, if you want to travel, then you're going to have to get it. So in other words, it will be mandatory.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's too soon.
my mom who had COVID, my whole family had it. Was They were fine. My mom doesn't want to get the vaccine, but she's got to go to Greece to see her mom. And in Greece, you need it. They have the vaccine to get into to stores, restaurants, anywhere you go, you have to have the vaccine. So she's kind of forced to go and get that, and it's happening in other places too, and it's not happening here yet. But they've just talked about. They're now putting it out there that once it's FDA approved, then it's going to be made mandatory. And it's like, if you would have told somebody
Mm.
this 2 years ago, they would have been like, "You're telling me that the government is forcing a medical procedure, forcing medication into everyone, and everyone is okay with it?" Nobody would have believed you. They
Yeah,
wouldn't have believed you.
conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
That would have said, yeah.
So it's a crazy thing, and I think it just kind of ties into the whole idea. I don't know if you know. Do you know Roosh? He's a YouTuber.
Yeah,
Um,
I saw a recent podcast with him and Milo, and
mhm,
before that, I had no idea who he was. So then
yeah.
I think I did a little bit of research afterwards just to get his background. But he was like a pickup artist.
Hmm.
Obviously, went into the doors of hell and had to change his life and became an Orthodox
And another
Christian.
strange thing. So, do you know who Vin Armani is? Vin Armani.
No,
So he was
I'm
on
not
the.
aware.
I interviewed him on my channel a few months ago. He was a former gigolo, male gigolo, and he was the star of Showtime's show called Gigolo, right?
All right.
So he was a gigolo for 5 years, made money doing that. So he was heavily in the pickup artistry game and whatnot. Made a lot of money from it. So now he is an Orthodox. He just was um, christened, I think like a few months ago actually, but he's been a catechumen for the last couple of years, and his life story is very interesting. Like when I had him on my show, it was like the least that we didn't talk really about the gigolo, like the thing that should be the most interesting thing about his kind of pathway from there, and to see that happen with someone like Roosh, who I saw his interview with Milo, and just a little bit before that, I wasn't too familiar with him a little bit, and he wrote this article called "The Rise of the Orthosphere." Did you read that, or you come across it at all?
Hmm. No, no, no,
So
not at all.
I
What's that?
saw it like as he's kind of naming the nascent. He started just talking about how there's this kind of funnel that's happening for young men and women that are finding orthodoxy and are being driven to the church. And he talks about how all these different parts of the internet, like the hyper masculine group, the pickup artistry group. It was a fun and exciting thing, and it seemed like a community was building. But then, kind of the gist of his article, but there's nothing, there's no there, right? There's nothing at the center of it, so it dissipates. So all of these from across the world and all these different levels and places, people are finding the Orthodox Church. And I kind of commented that that's at the same time the most wonderful and terrifying thing, because for that to be happening, that means the world is falling apart quickly. Like things
Yes.
are falling apart quickly, and people are just looking for anything real, and they're looking into Orthodox. I'm like, oh, this thing seems pretty real, and let me latch onto that. So
Mm.
there's this rise of the Ortho Bros, which I resonate with, and I appreciate. Jay Dyer, I think you were on with him.
Yes,
Uh,
I had him on my podcast a while ago.
yeah, great guy, and
Yeah.
you're on Church of the Eternal Logos. I had him on as well, and I was on his as well. So very interesting. But I got my, I guess, I got my cut my teeth really, and returned to Orthodoxy. So I'm Greek Orthodox. Left the church for 20 plus years, and through Jordan Peterson and especially Jonathan Peugeot, I found the church fathers and started heavily reading and engaging with them. In the last couple of years, I've been getting back into the church and trying to get my entire family back in there. But I'm
Mm.
heavily, I'm kind of involved with the Symbolic World Group and Jonathan Peugeot. He just
Yeah, he's
gave
awesome.
me the ability to see with new eyes, but not new eyes, old eyes in a new way, in a sense. So, are you familiar with him? I wonder what your thoughts are on his work.
I love Jonathan Peugeot. I think he was the first Orthodox person that I came across on YouTube, but I wasn't sure. I'm like, Orthodoxy? Is that like Christianity? I wasn't even sure really what it was. And it took
Yeah.
like a couple of years for that seed to sprout, sort of
Mhm.
thing. It's a
Yeah.
long, really, really long journey, because I think with my new age spiritual journey, it's all about like fantastical experiences and emotional appeals and,
Hmm.
getting wrapped up in this spiritual world. Whereas this actually was a very long journey, just pure logic and reason and really inquiring honestly. and seeing if it actually matches up with all scales of reality. And it takes a lot of work. I had to do a lot of deprogramming,
Mm-hmm.
and going to hell and seeing the devil helped to
Yeah.
scare the bejesus out of me too. So,
Yeah, I bet.
and yeah, but even like now, because I went to a Orthodox church about maybe 6 weeks ago for the first time
Mm-hmm.
in my life, and I've been going like twice a week ever since.
Wow.
It's been really
Really?
awesome. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I'm free. But
Yeah.
now with the lockdown, you can't even go to church, and
Hmm.
that's the thing that's like really you can't. So I can go to McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. That's an essential business, but I can't go to church. Like that's scary stuff, man. Like when the government stops you from going to church, that's when you know something is really wrong.
Yeah. 100%. So is church
But
closed,
yeah,
or is it limited
no, it's all
access?
closed.
Wow.
No, it's all closed. Yeah,
God, my Lord.
as far as I
That's
know, unless someone please, if if it is open and maybe a secret like kind of it reminds me of like the early first centuries of like the rich people opening their basement
mm-hmm.
for liturgy worship or something. If you guys
Yeah.
know of something, please let me know.
All right.
But I
I
was just
had, yeah.
getting right in. I was right in the middle of it, getting like I said, going twice a week, and I'm actually in the process of getting anointed because apparently, because I was born Catholic, I don't have to get baptized. I
Hmm.
just have to get anointed, which is really nice to know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. My wife is a born Catholic too, and she's, started that process as well, to be chrismated. And there's all this, I think it's more of a political back and forth of whether you need to be baptized or whether you can just be chrismated. But what was your experience first going to the church? Because is it a Greek Orthodox or is it Russian? What kind of church is it, if you don't
it
mind me asking?
was. I know it said Antiochian.
Oh,
Does that give
Antiochian.
you?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Which one's that? Because it didn't necessarily say if it was Greek or not.
Yeah.
Because there was because I was originally going to go to a Greek Orthodox, but I wasn't sure if they English
Yeah. What was it like?
have a
Um,
liturgy in English.
yeah.
The one that I went to, it's like really really good.
Yeah.
Oh man, it was amazing because like I was used to going into the Catholic Church, and that has its own beauty and aesthetic. So I'm not bagging on it. I've recently had to bite my tongue because I've been going too tough on the Catholics, but it's really Roman Catholicism, which is only one of 24 Catholic churches, and the rest are Eastern Catholic, which have Orthodox liturgies, which I just recently found out. So I was
Hmm.
like, oh, whoa. So I got to stop crapping on Catholicism as a whole.
Hmm.
It's really just Roman Catholicism.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, when I went in, man, it was really beautiful. It was like just like with the icons and the kind of that gold
Hmm.
everywhere, and it felt like home, man. Like I was so moved, and the choir was so. It was just really beautiful, man. Like especially to come home and thinking about my journey, and I was just like so grateful that I was baptized. I think if I
Hmm.
wasn't baptized, I don't know if I would have gone out of that hellhole. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I really do believe by the grace of God and the Holy Spirit that I was able to get out of this world relatively unscathed. Sort of like I feel like the lost sheep. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And they were talking about that in one of the sermons, and that's a story that I really resonate with because I went really deep in the forest, and Christ had to come on, mate,
Yeah.
wrong way, come here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I wonder if that was necessary. And I wonder what role, I know we're kind of all over the place, but
that's all good.
what role psychedelics have to play. Because I was heavily into psychedelics. I may or may not have grew my own mushrooms, and all of it full bore. And just if all the CEOs would take DMT, then they would run humane companies. And it made so much sense in that time and in that place when because of a lot of great effects that I was seeing it having in my life. And you never saw any negatives from it. I mean, you never heard about the negatives. You would hear all about the psychedelic renaissance and how you're getting access to spiritual spaces that we've been cut off from, and you're encountering entities that can heal your PTSD. And
Mm,
I've encountered a few entities, and not all of them are nice.
me
And
too.
I was just talking today about somebody was asking me, because I was heavily into Reiki and doing healings, hands-on healings, and qigong and that type of stuff for many years. And he was telling me, he's like, James, he was a sort of a client. He's like, it works. That stuff works. I'm like, yeah, that's why I stopped doing it. I didn't stop doing it because it doesn't work. I stopped doing it because it works. And I feel like we don't, it's like, I related
Mm.
to having like a 5-year-old child. You give them an unlocked iPad, right? It's beautiful. You can see awesome videos of dirt bikes and cartoons and unlimited having fun, unlimited play and pictures. But you can come across a website, a porn website that could, bring something into your consciousness that you're not prepared for. And it
Oh
could
yeah, or a
affect the rest
stuff
of your life.
film.
Yeah,
Man,
exactly.
there are so many videos I wish I never saw, man. I saw some messed up shit when I was a kid.
So that's the way
So
I see it.
yeah.
Playing with hands-on healing and Reiki and flirting with trying to
Mm.
find entities. I had lots of different stories, but I look at it like that. We don't have the spiritual maturity to be accessing these spaces. So I'm
No,
very like,
the vast majority of people don't. I would say
yeah.
it's the pragmatic fallacy. I was reading Orthodoxy and Religion of the Future by
Hmm.
Father Seraphim Rose, and he said that yeah, it's like just because it works, it doesn't mean it's good. All you can say if it works, it works.
Hmm.
That's it.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if I would have eventually found my Orthodox roots if I didn't realize that there is a spiritual space and that's real, and that kind of crumbled my materialistic underpinnings. So that opened up a space to realize that, oh, the spiritual spaces are real, but I was interpreting it into densities and dimensions, which I think, I'm not saying there's not a lot to that, but I'm saying that you know got into a lot of the law of one stuff, the raw material. I don't know if you're familiar with that stuff.
Yeah, I'm a little bit familiar with that. I
Yeah.
got more into like Buddhism, a bit of
Hmm.
Taoism. I'm actually trying to find the Tao, eternal Christ and the Tao. What's that? There's a book
Oh,
about.
Christ, the Eternal Tao. Yeah.
Thank you. That's the one.
Father
Yeah, yeah.
Damascene. Yeah.
It's a very rare book and they're super expensive online. I really
So
want that.
it's funny that you mentioned that. That book was what started my YouTube channel. Like,
Oh
that
wow.
book affected me so much. It's a thick book. I got it and I started reading it, and it affected me so much. It was in the right when COVID started. I'm like, I'm going to point a camera at me and I'm going to read this book from cover to cover. So that's what I did. I read every chapter of that book. So if you want to read it, I have a whole playlist from cover to
Awesome.
cover. Yeah, reading it.
Sweet.
But that was
I
a
guess you're the perfect person to bring this up to then.
yeah, right.
Yeah, nice.
That's funny.
Yeah.
And it was Father Seraphim's work, and I got his book, his Life and Works, which is his biography, which I've read on my channel as well. Not it's total; it's a huge book. But
Yeah.
his journey through life, like, he was heavily into Alan Watts. He went and visited and watched some of his lectures and his classes. He really got
Wow.
into Buddhism, and he was really trying to find his way as well, and Taoism. And Taoism is probably what had the biggest impact on me prior, and was played a big role in me coming back to my Orthodox roots. I really got into Taoism, and it was practicing Nei Dan and Qigong, and was really heavily influenced in reading Chinese medicine and Wu Qing, which is the 5 element theory. Really kind of went deep into that. And there's a lot of resonances, I think, with Orthodoxy and Taoism. I think that the logos manifests itself in different ways in different times and places throughout history. And this was a big realization, is that I used to think, how could someone say, yeah, Christianity is true? Out of all the religions in the world, you happen to be born in a place where you're a particular original, and that's the one true religion, and the other ones are all false. And it's like, well, that's not how it is.
Yeah.
My understanding is, like, they're not false. They're just not, they're not as closer to the fidelity of the truth. They all have logos, you know, pieces of the logos in it, right? Some realizations of the truth.
Yes.
But Christianity being like, you know, the, the logos became man, right? That truth that we're looking for in philosophy and in different religions, and that manifested in the world, and it's there for you to engage with. And if you engage with it, you will realize the truth. And that's a heavy thing, man. That's a heavy thing to
Oh yeah,
realize.
man.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's not about, because when people say like Christianity is true and everything else is false, already you're closing doors and you're hardening people's hearts, because that's not
Hmm.
accurate language. I would say it's just the fullness of truth, and the other ones have bits of truth. Some are closer to others. From what I understand, Taoism seems to come the closest, at
Hmm.
least when it comes to Eastern religion. But God's grace and mercy is permeates all of Earth, man. So
Hmm.
you'd be surprised how it manifests in different religions. It's just that, from what I understand, Orthodox Christianity has, it's like the fulfillment of all that truth.
Yeah. And I think let's explore that word truth a little bit. Like, what does that mean? How could you say that Jesus Christ, a person, is the truth? A truth is when an experiment, the results match the hypothesis, right? Truth is how does that relate to
Mm,
Christ being the truth? And that's something I've been wrestling with for quite a while. But the way that I kind of see it is, truth. The world discloses itself. Truth discloses itself in different ways, right? Science is a way of asking questions about the world that presents an answer. And if that answer
yes.
matches the question in a sense, right, based on the experiment, then you could say that there's a truth event that happened there. But that is a miracle in itself. Like that is insane in itself. But the understanding of Christ being the truth, the Tao, the way, the light, the truth, is a something that's interesting to wrestle with if you've got a background in philosophy and psychology and whatnot. So, what do you make of that idea of Christ, the person, being the truth?
Oof, yeah, that's a heavy question and still unfolding for myself on this journey. But from what I understand about truth, even prior to really finding orthodoxy, is that, well, truth should be true no matter what, on all scales of reality. It always should have been true and always will be true. So even you brought up like scientific hypothesis. Many times it changes over time. So it's already like, well, that can't really be true. It's not as true as, let's say, 1 + 1 = 2.
Mm-hmm.
That's always been true, always will be true. But then you're kind of talking about a different. That's when you get into like metaphysics,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think with Christ, I don't know, man. It just seems like when you really and honestly and genuinely go down the rabbit hole and you follow the breadcrumbs, it just seems to always lead to Christ. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you're genuinely honest about your search. And you can tell, like, with a lot of people who get stuck, like myself in the past, who got stuck in the Eastern spiritual psychedelic New Age world, people stop inquiring after it, or they don't see past their own logical fallacies. They
Mm-hmm.
get stuck in empiricism, for example, but it's not even like a scientific empiricism. It's like an emotional empiricism. It's I've experienced this spiritual experience, and this entity told me this, and my heart agreed with it. Therefore, it must be real. And people even say, there's like a famous New Age teacher, Leo Gura, who's all about kind of non-duality, all that kind of stuff, and he even says like you have to take this 5-MeO DMT drug and you'll know the truth. You'll realize that you're God. You
Mm-hmm.
have to take this drug. But then it's like, but I have taken 5-MeO DMT. I didn't come to that conclusion. So
Yeah.
really, it's not that you have to do this and then you'll see what I mean. It's you have to do this particular thing and interpret it the exact same way I'm interpreting it, and then come
Mm-hmm.
talk to me. So
Yeah.
it's like it's weird because a lot of these people like super intelligent, man. Like they're very, very smart. They know about philosophy, history, culture, psychedelics, but then they have like this blind spot. It's pride, right? This is what Father
Yeah.
Seraphim Rose talks about a lot in Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future, pre-list.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you can really tell if something is of God or not of God, is that over time it just accelerates your growth of pride. And this is something that I saw within myself. Some people will call it the spiritual ego. You have a
Mm-hmm.
psychedelic experience. You think that you've accessed truth. Man, they should put mushrooms in the water supply and everyone must do this. All this, you have that kind of attitude of, you think that you know better
Mm-hmm.
than the average layperson. Like you think you're more spiritual and wise than like the postman or your
Mm-hmm.
mum, right? Because they're just normies, they're sheeps. And then
Yeah.
you'll even get a lot of people have a problem with alienation, and they think that they can't relate with people anymore because they're too spiritual, they're too advanced spiritual. And I used to kind of understand, like I do understand it now, of course, but now I see it as it's just pride and spiritual ego. Like you think
Yeah.
that almost like you're too good to kind of be with everyone else, like the normal people, and that's a big problem, man.
Yeah.
And yeah, relating to your, like, how do you know if Jesus is the truth? I guess it comes. I was listening to Bishop Barron, and a lot of people think that faith is just believing something from a lack of evidence, but he framed it in a way that it's like, no, you build your foundation on reason and logic, and then you transcend that, and that's really the kind of the leap of faith. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing, just building my foundation for years and years. Like it took me like more than 3 years to finally actually come out and say like, yeah, I'm a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
I was like closeted and kind of wrestling with it in my mind for a very long time, looking at it from all different angles and learning from the ground up. How what is logic? How does that
Mm-hmm.
actually work? And there's an interesting book called The Trivium, and that
Mm-hmm.
kind of breaks down exactly how logic works and things like that. And seeing debates from atheist versus Muslim versus Christian, like really trying to get every single perspective possible, and then sift out the nonsense and seeing what actually sticks. And even like Hermeticism was quite useful for me. That kind of grounded me in the sense that it disproves that you are God. So at least they had that going. Because there's a lot of this pride. It's a classic Lucifer archetype.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm God. I choose what's right and wrong.
Yeah.
And
No, for sure.
it's scary stuff, man. Because again, you see, because I've peeked behind the curtain of the whole New Age community. I've met a lot of like huge people with huge followings, and
Mm-hmm.
that people look up to. And
Yeah.
I've met them in real life, and that it's not what you think, man. It's definitely
Yeah.
not what you think. They're just as lost,
Mm-hmm. Maybe even
and
more
it's like
lost because they
even
think
more
they're
lost. Yeah.
yeah, because and it's I had that experience of I had my awakening in 2015, quit my six-figure job. Now I'm going to start teaching meditation.
Wow.
Yeah, with my family. Like I had a young, it's not really funny. It is a little looking back on it now. I had a 1 year old and a wife, and she from it, what must have looked like from the outside was a mental breakdown. This is a mental breakdown. My eyes, I'm awakening, and I'm shedding my emotional baggage from the past, and now I'm going to help people heal themselves. And I'm doing this of the goodness of my heart. But what was really happening is this inflation of a spiritual ego, where just like you're saying, there are normies, and they just need to wake up too and whatnot. So it's the way I can tell now what's different, right? Is what are you doing spiritually? Is it bringing you closer to the humans closest to you, or is it bringing you further away from them? If it's bringing you further away from them, whatever reason it is that you think, it's a diabolical force. So the two differences, and so symbolic, like
Mm.
Jonathan used it, symbolic is a Greek for the Greek root is symvoli, which means to throw together, to bring together, right? Which is the inverse is diabolic, which is to spread apart, right? To divide. And there's all these
Yes.
diabolical forces in the world right now that are looking to divide us personally, within our families, within our communities, and within our nations. So the inverse of diabolic is symbolic, and it's like because you never know if you're in another ideology or if you're in another spiritual inflated ego. You don't know it. So from my back, so I try to be mindful of that and just be like, oh, am I in this space of I was before? And what's different is the difference in the relationships that I have with my wife, my kids, people at work, my family. Like those relationships are what I use as a guidepost, whether to kind of as a barometer to see whether my spiritual journey is moving in the right
Right.
direction.
The fruits.
The fruits,
Mm.
yes, yeah, that's so. And you brought up a lot of good stuff, man. Like faith. Marshall McLuhan, he's a media studies guy. I got really heavy into him. I read a lot of his stuff on my YouTube channel as well, and he said that what was it? Faith is a mode of knowing, right? It's faith is something you cultivate. Like miracles happen around us all the time, but we've been kind of our ability to perceive them have been attenuated. Like our heart has been filled and clouded, so we can't see and observe and experience the miracles. But that is
Mm.
something you cultivate over time, through metanoia, through prayer, repentance, going to the liturgy, reading the Bible and following the commandments. Like it's not about just believing it in Christ. It's about following his teachings. And it's like, if you follow them, like there's the commandments, there's 10 of them. Like it's easy to think. And I bring this up a lot because it's like, I thought the 10 commandments were silly. They're for kids. Why would God care if you sleep with another man's wife and whatnot? But at the very core of it, it's like, these are the 10 rules that if you follow, you can build civilization on earth and it will function, right? Don't
Mm.
lie, don't cheat, don't steal, don't be, and the 10th commandment is the biggest one that Rene Girard, his book, I See Satan Fall Like Lightning. I read that one too. I kind of went on a rampage there, just reading books on in front of my phone. his understanding of mimetic rivalry and how these commandments are not just superfluous. That if you follow them in your own life, your relationships will sort themselves out, and your life will manifest in a way that is beautiful, in a sense. So it's you know there's a lot to it, and you and I both are really infants in orthodoxy, which is a wonderful thing, right?
Yeah, definitely.
We're just getting started, and so there's so much to experience over time that I'm looking forward to it, and it takes time, years. Whereas in the psychedelic and the new age stuff is you start meditating or start having these experiences. You take the psychedelic, you're going to get immediate enlightenment. It's kind of
Yeah,
a
yeah.
yeah.
Like 5-MeO DMT. That's like the pill to enlightenment. That's all you need.
Dude, I was
And
into Leo for years, man. Years I watched Leo stuff. I was into
me
Integral,
too.
and then all of a sudden he got into psychedelics, and everything became about psychedelics. It's like, oh, okay. And then,
That's when I stopped watching him, and that was when I was even in psychedelics. That just
mhm,
goes to show how much he lost the plot, and his pride has just been too inflamed. And I've reached out to him because I wanted to do a debate with him,
mhm,
but no, he doesn't want to do debates at all.
yeah. Did he circle back with you?
No,
No.
I
Yeah.
remember going into a thing on the comments like saying that, basically talking about how Hermeticism, how it shows that you're not really God, and then he says, "Oh, you're not reading the Kabbalion properly," and I'm like, "No, hang on a sec. Actually, blah 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 blah. This is
Yeah.
clearly what it says." And then he responds with, "Try psychedelics and then come back to me." It's like, dude, it's like I didn't want to pull the card, but do you know who I am? I'm
Mhm.
like the psychedelic dude, and you're telling me to do psychedelics. This is so funny. Like
Yeah.
again, it just shows it's the pride. It's
Yeah.
there's a certain point where logic just completely falls apart, and then it becomes all about emotional appeals.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I know how to had to rebuild my foundation of philosophy and logic and religion, all that kind of stuff. Now it's so easy to just you just ask those cutthroat questions and get the crux of the argument, and you can just expose it for what it is. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy, man. He did like a 30-day 5-MeO DMT meditation retreat where he just smoked it every single day and just telling kids to do it,
Yeah.
snort this shit and take it.
Bro, like
And it was
how could
it's
yeah.
scary, man. Because I've met a lot of people, because from someone in my position, you could imagine how many emails I have and how many I've got a huge picture of this psychedelic community, and I'm very well aware of the dark roads that people take, and it's the same pattern. I get it over and over and over again. Tom, I had a bad trip, and now I'm lost and into this abyss and don't know what to do, and I feel confused, and and I've heard some really horrific ones, like this one guy he had an ayahuasca ceremony, and this is someone who had like military PTSDs. He's traveled abroad, fought in wars, and he said that his ayahuasca ceremony made that look like child's play.
Mm.
So just you could just to paint a picture of how horrific some of these realms can take you. You know what I mean? And then once you start talking about the bad side of it, which I started because throughout my whole channel, I'm honest about what's going on. And then I get a lot of people like, "Oh, you shouldn't talk about this. You're going to scare people away from this." Stuff like that. And it's like, so I'm just supposed to keep quiet on the bad stuff and only talk about the good stuff.
Yeah.
And then when I see, like, for example, people coming to Christ, I just saw the pattern of, hang on a sec, this guy had like a Christ experience. He became a Christian, lived a good life. And then you check back years later and they're still doing like really good.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't hear about people having a Christ experience and then going into a psychosis. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't hear these kind of things. So I was like, it kind of piqued my interest. And I remember seeing Stephen Bankard's. It was the first Christian that I had on my channel. And oh my goodness, I can't even begin to tell you how much hate I got for that video.
Hmm.
And I remember seeing his video ages ago. He was like a new age influencer, and he went through a really dark place. He had a mansion. He was like rich from basically spreading a lot of this new age nonsense, and
Mm-hmm.
he had a Christ experience and completely flipped his life around.
Hmm.
And I remember, like, I was in the middle of my psychedelic journey and seeing a lot. Every once in a while, I would see like kind of Christians commenting like, dude, Tom, you gotta stop doing this. This is demonic. I'm like, shut. Like, I'll get defensive. Like, please don't. I make a living from this. Don't tell me this is true. It's hard
Yeah.
because like your identity is attached to this
Mm-hmm.
persona, and then your career is built on it, and it's like, oh man, it's really hard to kind of let it go. I didn't want to believe it, and I wanted my hardest to reconcile psychedelics with Christianity, you know,
Yeah.
and not that I have a black or white perception on psychedelics. I think they're still mysterious tools, and who knows what they are, because
Mm-hmm.
I've heard stories of people have a psychedelic experience and they come to Christ through it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to look at the pre-list, if it brought them closer to Christ, then it's like, well, I can't ignore that. It didn't happen to me, but
Yeah.
it does. So it's like, it's so strange, man. What do you make of that? Like,
Well,
if psychedelics
yeah.
are supposed to be super demonic, let's say, from like a fundamentalist point of view, then how is it that some people have a psychedelic experience and then they come through Christ that way?
Yeah.
And they
Well,
literally, they
yeah.
leave it all behind, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. I wouldn't say that that psychedelics didn't bring you to or me to Christ, right? We didn't have that experience, right? But again, like they open up spaces and possibilities to break down the materialism. So they break your world, they break your default mode network, and they
Yeah.
shatter your identity and your personality. Which if when that happens, right, there's a vacuum that's going to be there, and it's going to be filled in with whatever is around you, whatever media or consciousness you're absorbing through your environment, right? So it breaks you down, and then you can rebuild your identity. And a lot of times that can come, most of the time that works out and a short spurt of feeling really good and finding the psychedelic community. But then there's nothing after that. Like there's no long-term kind of effects that are positive in a sense. So I don't know. I think that they're tools. I don't think they're necessarily demonic. I think they are tools where the demonic can have an influence, an amplified influence, just like the internet is in a sense. So I don't know that they're necessarily demonic. I mean, they're,
For sure. Yep.
yeah. So God created them, right? I just would, you know, I wouldn't advise anybody at all, or before I was a proselytizer of them. I wouldn't advise anybody for or against doing them. Probably more towards against, but I don't want to influence
Yeah.
anybody else's journey.
And that's where I am, by the way.
Yeah,
Like, I'm not, like I said, I'm not a black and white completely against them, but I
yeah,
lean towards not recommending them
yeah.
to people.
Well, the term is psychedelic, right? The Greek word for soul is psyche, is where we get our term psychology from, the logos of this psyche, right? Psychology. Psychedelic means soul generating in a sense, right? Psychedelic. So
Mm.
it's, you take them, you will have access to spiritual states, right? And that will manifest differently in different people depending on their, not level of consciousness, but the quality of their consciousness, I think. And I think for some people, it can and it will bring them towards Christ, but I think that probably is in the minority. I think for
Yes.
I don't know. And another thing with Christianity and with regular prayer and praying to the saints, that's changed my life dramatically, and it gives you this discernment, this ability to see patterns and to observe things. And Jonathan Peugeot talks about the term pattern. The root word of the term pattern is patera, which means father, right? So the word
Mm.
the word pattern
Wow.
is,
That just
so
blew my mind, bro. I didn't even realize that. Yeah.
yeah, so when Jonathan talks about, like, this is how I kind of understand the idea of Christ being the truth is, symbolism is when two worlds come together. The truth manifests and is mediated by the appropriate mediation of heaven and earth, right? Of meaning and
Mm.
matter, right? Christ is
Yes.
is the appropriate way that the multiplicity is unified and the unity is multiplied, right? So
Mm.
there's many ways that can happen, right? You can take psychedelics and your unity is dissolved and you're into multiplicity, and that unity can be built up through with garbage, right? And that identity that you have, and even though your PTSD and your anxiety is gone, maybe you needed that PTSD and that anxiety to work through, but now that that's gone, you're going to unify probably based on some demonic influences, diabolic influences. By diabolic, I mean dividing. I don't mean like scary demon stuff. I mean things that are not going to be positive and for you and your family for the most part,
Yes,
right?
yes, and
So
demonic as well doesn't necessarily have to be dark, pitchfork, red,
yeah,
fucking monster people.
yeah,
It can be that way, and I've definitely experienced that. But
mm-hmm,
sometimes they can appear as beautiful, man. Like Lucifer
mm-hmm,
seems to be like a beautiful, gorgeous angel, where he's just like marveling at this light being, right?
yeah, yeah,
So it's
and
all
he is
there, yeah. It's
most
all
like
that. That's what's funny. Like reading the Bible, it's like, oh my god, it's all here. I can't believe I took
yeah.
this long to read it. I went through every single religion until finally reading the Bible. That's what's so funny about it. I
Yeah,
was
me
so
too.
anti-Christian.
And I remember seeing those exact comments on psychedelic pages or on my, on different things like, hey, find Lord Jesus Christ, just would pop up in a psychedelic comment. I'm
Yeah.
like, what is this guy doing? Like, get out
Oh,
of here.
shut up, dude.
It would
You need to
make me
take
like,
mushrooms. Yeah.
I would look down on him or her. I'd be like, oh
Yeah.
my God, look at this. Because the idea of Christianity that we have in our head has been cultivated through media and through culture for so long that it's cool to experiment with any other religion. To be a
Yep.
Buddhist, oh, you meditate, dude. Yeah, that's so cool, man. Yeah. Oh, you take
Yeah.
psychedelics, bro. You're doing Zen meditation. That's dope, man. Like
Yeah.
you're a Christian. Oh no,
Oh,
that's corny. Really.
yeah. Yeah.
My
Well, like I
parents were
said,
Christians.
it was the first time that I had hate, like true hate, for interviewing a Christian. So it's
that's
like it's insane, and
that's
I've
what you know it's true.
for giving a platform to a bigot and a homophobe and all this kind of stuff. But then when I was given a platform to people promoting drugs recklessly, or uh, I think last year I released a documentary, or 2 years ago, about going to India and smoking weed with sadhus, and one of the sadhus who I had on, he later got found out that he was a sexual predator. Like, where was the outcry for that? For giving a platform to a sexual deviant. But you know what I'm saying? Like, there's
Mm-hmm.
like so many double standards, and
Yeah.
it's like it's really insane how quick people are to jump at the opportunity to shut you down as soon as you mention Christ, and then
Yeah.
reading Revelations, and it seems that we're polarized. Kind of Christ versus Christ, symbolic versus diabolic kind of worldview. And yeah, New Age, man, it's all beautiful and fun and games at the beginning. That's how it lures you in. But
Mm-hmm.
there's some really dark stuff. I've just never met a New Age person that has true peace in their heart. Like, because they're always searching, always trying to heal themselves. There's
Mm-hmm.
always a void in their heart. And again, like, I took a long time for me to even talk about this stuff, because I wanted to see the fruits. I want to see,
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, maybe this is just another ideology I'm
Mm-hmm.
attaching to. Maybe this is just an ego backlash or whatever it is. So, but over time, man, I can tell you, like, even though I'm like at the beginning, I'm an infant during this Orthodox journey, I've never had more peace in my heart. I'm more
Mm-hmm.
grounded, more loving. Like, the fruits are coming,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Beautiful, man.
it's not just about the fruits, but it's hard to ignore that, And even like my relationship has gone much better, and my fiance will tell you that during my peak New Age vegan psychedelic warrior mentality, that's when we had like the most problems. I
Mm-hmm.
was emotionally unstable. I had this huge spiritual ego and pride and this kind of stuff. But at that time, I thought I was being a compassionate, loving hippie. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not. But you have to just zoom out. That's why a lot of these New Age people, they break away from their family and friends,
Mm-hmm.
because they're a negative influence, bringing down their vibe. They'll even say like energy vampires.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, it's because you've broken down all the doors, man. So you're super sensitive. I couldn't listen to any heavy music. I couldn't listen to negative news or anything. Like, I couldn't handle it because I thought I was being too spiritual, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just couldn't handle it anymore. Whereas now I can talk to you about the apocalypse and revelations and watch some messed up stuff, and I still have peace in my heart. I can
Yeah.
discern myself from it.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to handle reality. That's what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying, because it's going to get much scarier. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're a sensitive snowflake, then it's going to be very difficult to handle
Yeah.
the upcoming times.
Yeah. I had a similar, so I lost 20 pounds. I ate fruits and nuts for about a year straight, right? Because I was doing,
What?
Yeah, literally, it
That's
was cultivate.
commitment, bro.
Well, it
Wow.
felt good because I was doing qigong, and it's a real thing, man. You can cultivate energy and work with that, and it feels good, and it puts you in these wonderful spiritual states. But it also makes you quit your six-figure job while you have a family. And I
Mm.
had this entity that I thought of as Metatron come to me, and I'd see him in my meditations, and the colors purple would come a lot, and just over time, I had this voice in my head that said, "Hey, you've got to leave your life to go if you're going to travel and to give healing, what's it called, sessions or teachings around the world." And it just always would pop in, and I'm like, "What the fuck is this?" I'm like, this is
Whoa.
strange because I never wanted to do that at all. Like, and then God bless her, I think she's a real angel, like, or to stick with me, and she's totally not into any of that at all, right? It's totally foreign to her, as it should be. And then to see her husband, while we have a family and a mortgage, say, just quit your six-figure job and try to build a business where most people in this area think it's very, very strange, this type of stuff, right? So it's not like there's a client based, so um, almost lost my family from it. And since then, I've got two more kids, and things have never been better between us, because I like the idea of Christ being the truth, right? You sacrifice for the ones that you love, right? It's that's what the idea of a woman submits to her husband. That's what we hear, and it sounds so strange, but the woman submits to the extent that the man sacrifices, right? So you
Mm.
sacrifice for your family and your wife, and they support you. And there's this, and that sweet spot is the symbolic spot. It's where heaven and earth meet. It's the appropriate mediation of heaven and earth. That's what Christ is, right? And you want to imitate and emulate Christ in all of your relationships, in all of your interactions, even with strangers at the gas station. I feel like my just that brief communication with him is more authentic and more real. Like, just weird stuff like that, is a
Oh
beautiful
yeah.
thing, man. You know?
Exactly. Like you
Yeah.
see this video like of just to bring up Leo Gura again, but he's a perfect archetype for this what we're talking about. There was a video where he had an enlightenment experience, a live experience where I don't know, he took acid or something, and he
Mm-hmm.
was, "I am God, I'm omniscient, I know the secret of the universe." And then the Amazon guy knocks on his,
Yeah, I saw that.
yeah, I'm recording a video. It's like, whoa, where was all this loving, enlightened stuff? Like if you can't even treat the delivery guy with some respect, it's
Leave
like
it at the door. Oh, geez.
that's what it is, though.
God's kind of a
Yeah,
dick,
yeah,
man.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Man,
So
that's
it's
funny.
like right there, it kind of shows the logical fallacy and the pride, because
Yeah.
in their mind they're like, "Yes, I'm God," but then in actual reality, it's like they're a dick,
Yeah.
you know.
And the more intelligent you are, the more prideful you become, because you've been validated for being the smart one for so long, and you're able to understand abstract philosophical ideas, and, second tier integral thinker, and, transcendent, include, and all that stuff. So that pride comes in strong, right? And the stronger it is, the kind of harder the fall is. But that's funny you mentioned that. I probably would have never remembered that video of watching of him, and you just mentioned it, and it stood out to me. That part of that video stood out, where Amazon guy was at the door. I'm like,
Yeah.
what the heck, man? But Connor Murphy, that dude thinks he's God too. So why is he wrong? Like, Connor Murphy,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've
yeah,
seen some of his latest stuff. It's like it's painful to watch sometimes. It's like, oh man,
yeah.
this guy's really gone deep. But at least he's more consistent with his actions than what Leo is.
Hmm.
Because if you really were God and everything's relative and there is no such thing as right and wrong, then why
Yeah.
not just have sex with as many women as possible and be crazy and do
Yeah.
whatever you want to do?
He's
So
following the
he's
logic.
he's a yeah, exactly. He's at least following his logic. So
Yeah.
he's like the embodiment of Leo Guru's teachings. That's what's
he,
funny about it.
he's the fruit of Leo Guru's teachings.
Yeah,
He's the
yeah,
fruit. So
100%.
you could
Yeah,
judge the roots by the fruits.
yeah.
There you go. And I wonder, I wanted to reach out to Leo and be like, have you read the church? Like, because a lot of, like, especially Saint Gregory Palamas, like, they go deep and heavy into, like, deep philosophical ideas, and their positions are just astounding. Like, it's, in the Hesychasts tradition, they've had meditation, and this type of meditation, and kind of working through noetic prayer and doing the Jesus prayer and whatnot. But they wouldn't advise just anybody to pick it up and do it. Like, they knew thousands of years ago, 1,000 years ago, that if you do try to do this stuff without a pure heart, right, you're gonna let forces in that you can't control, right? So they
Mm.
would go through this, they would cultivate their heart and a pure heart through prayer and repentance over many, many years, and only then would they like do the Jesus prayer while they're doing their deep breathing, in a sense. So all of that there that I found so fascinating in Taoism and Buddhism and Eastern traditions that just captured my attention. I realized that it's all there in the church fathers, in the tradition that my family is rooted from, right? And it's like, wow, but like I'm not super super interested in finding those practices and doing them. Like, oh, I'm not going to do that. Like maybe I'll be ready to do something like that in the future, but I'm not interested in that at all right now. In a sense, like I stopped meditated for many, many years. I was teaching it and I stopped completely. And my friends and stuff, like they still meditate, and people will ask me, what are some good meditations? Should I meditate? And I don't tell them no. Like I say that I say I don't meditate anymore. I don't. Oh, you think it's evil or something? No, I think that you can develop a meditation practice, and it can help with your anxiety. It can help with your sleep. It can help with your mental focus and your clarity, and it can have some great benefits. I think that's the case maybe for most people, but if you're
Mm.
really trying to dive into the spiritual aspects of meditation and really go deep, uh, you, I would advise against that. Not to anybody would I advise against, and just generally, like that is you're playing with fire there, quite literally, spiritual fire.
Slippery slope.
Yeah, so I don't know, but generally for something good for your mental health, I think it has benefited a lot of people. Um, but
Yeah, it's
I
more. It's like you said.
yeah.
It's more the spiritual aspect of it. It's even like with psychedelics. Like I would, if you're gonna do psychedelics, I think it's less dangerous to do a small dose recreationally than it is to do it for spiritual purposes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Not that I definitely wouldn't recommend doing it for fun. I don't, because
Yeah.
these aren't, it's not a game. But
Yeah.
I think that would be less dangerous than actively doing it to, develop your spirituality or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially
Definitely.
like you said, if your heart's not pure and your mind's not clean, and it's like this whole trap of kind of listening to your heart and listening to your mind. If your heart's polluted and what your heart's telling you is wrong, ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
you don't want, you got to think about these kind of things.
Yeah. No, I
But yeah, I
couldn't.
don't. Just on the record, I don't meditate anymore either. I used to meditate every day without
Mm-hmm.
fail, and I just switched to prayer, and I
Mm-hmm.
just feel way more peaceful. I'm getting like all the benefits that I was getting from meditation and then some,
Yeah.
but I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. Prayer. I've been praying regularly for the last probably close to 2 years now, and it's had a
Oh,
profound
nice.
impact on my life. But so did like meditation did too, but in a different way where I wanted to tell everybody about it, and it was like, you got to do this, and it made me, all these different things. This is totally different. It's subtle, and it has to do with the relationship, especially with my kids and my wife, and bringing me closer. And people come into my life, and it's strange. I don't do my own prayers. I pray the prayers of the saints. I have a prayer book because, I don't know what I'm doing, so I kind of,
Mm.
I'm looking for, to let the tradition guide me and to go slow. And I get a tendency to get into something, get excited, and then exhaust it. It's kind of the parable of the sower. Christ talks about the three types of soil, the three types of seeds. You throw the seed on the rock, and it doesn't have enough soil to grow, or you throw the seed, and then it roots really quick, but the roots don't go deep, so it grows, and then it dies quickly. But that right soil is cultivating that right soil. So the seed is planted, it's cultivated over time, and it's rooted, and then you can grow in the faith, in a sense. And that takes
Yes.
time, and it takes uh, trusting other people that have done it before, like not like gurus, but people like, that are in the church, is normal people, in a sense, and allow them to guide you. And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
and that's really important because, like in this new age spiritual community, again, you're your own god, so you don't even need a guru. You don't need a mentor. It's all up to you,
Yeah.
you and your pride. So that's very dangerous. It can be very dangerous,
Yeah.
because most people aren't completely honest with themselves. But you know, like you said, it's a long journey, especially orthodoxy, and I think that's why it's not as accessible. Well, it is accessible, but it's just it's not going to give you that that
Hmm.
fantastical experience. Maybe for some people it will. I don't want to rule that out because some people do come to Christ through a mystical experience.
Hmm.
But that shouldn't be the end all be all. But for myself, I think I had an intuition that this was going to be a slow grind, and that I'm going to have to just start from scratch, go backwards. That's why I love it when people say now. I get a few comments like, "Oh, Tom, you're just going back. You're just regressing. You're going backwards." It's like, yeah, because I went the wrong direction. Therefore,
Yeah.
I got to go back and then start
Yeah.
again,
Yeah,
sort
for
of thing.
sure. Yeah.
And yeah,
So it's funny. Adam and Eve were when they were in the garden. The subtle serpent said, eat from this tree, and you'll become like gods." And he wasn't wrong, right? And when you eat from you take psychedelics, you'll become like God, right? But it's not what you think, right? Like we have the knowledge and the a lot of qualities of an omnipotent being, but with none of the wisdom and the depth there, right? So you do feel like you're God, but you're a demigod. You're becoming demonic in a sense because you think you are God in a sense, and that's
yep,
exactly what the fall is. That's exactly what happened to Lucifer. He wanted to become God and higher than God, right? And then he fell,
mm,
right? And he fell. He took the fall in order to become God and to rule over earth in a sense. And that's what we flirt with when we do these things. Like, there's this idea that Adam and Eve were eventually to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Eventually, right? They were supposed to. That was their dispensation. When they were to spiritually mature, eat from the tree of life, which would have given them immortality, and then they could discern good and evil appropriately. Then they could mediate building civilization appropriately on Earth. But we fell. We ate the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil too early, and we don't have the spiritual discernment. And every time we try to build civilization, it breaks down, right? Because we just don't
mm,
have it. So it's an interesting way that interpretation had an effect on me of that we keep going back to the fruit. We keep going back to the tree without having the spiritual maturity to do so. So it's like, what can we do to what would life be like if Adam and Eve didn't fall? What would it be like if we were in a
mm,
community in a community of human beings that treated each other well and on all these different things. So I try to think of that like when doing the prayers and doing the different looking at Christianity as trying to develop spiritual maturity as God sees fit through God's grace slowly over time, and just try to build a good life for myself and those around me, and hopefully that will ripple out when people see that things are going well for you. They'll kind of vibe off that and experience it and want to do that the same thing in themselves for themselves. So
mm.
it's a beautiful journey, man. In the midst of this chaos of COVID and the world kind of disintegrating, there's this beautiful thing that I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, me too. It helped me find Christ. So
Yeah,
there's that.
and then
If it wasn't
yeah.
for this pandemic, I don't think I would have. I'm sure it was always an eventuality for sure because I've always been drawn just to the figure of Jesus. Even like when
Hmm.
I was in the midst of my new age spiritual journey, going through like an existential crisis, I remember even thinking of like why is it that when people have like a really demonic experience that they call out for Jesus and it works? Like
Hmm.
atheists, Buddhists, like doesn't matter what you believe in, but just the fact that you call out for Jesus and these demonic forces disappear. Or I've heard that same
Hmm.
story with UFOs.
Hmm.
Why not Buddha? Why not Muhammad? Why
Hmm.
not any of these other figures? And there's like this innate, powerful kind of symbol with Christ. Like even if you don't even believe in Christianity, even if you think about it in the New Age community, even Christ has a special place. They call
Hmm.
it Christ consciousness. Like they don't call it Buddha consciousness. Like
Yep.
yeah, they try to kind of draw parallels, but clearly Christ has like a much higher place in their own ideology. Yes, it's twisted and perverse and completely wrong, but even intuitively they know that Christ has like a, I don't know, like a special place,
Hmm.
and just
Yeah.
kind of thinking about those kind of things. And it's powerful stuff, man. Like there isn't even like my friend. I remember I was talking to him recently, and when he was like a complete atheist, anti-Christian, and then there was like a huge earthquake, and he thought he was gonna die. And what did he do? Of course, he went down to his knees and prayed to, prayed to Jesus.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It's like
this
this.
is
Yeah,
this
it's
is
like the story of the apostles in the boat, and the big storm comes, right? And
I was
you
literally reading that this morning, so it's trippy that you bring it out.
it's
Yeah.
like, well, they called out for Jesus. They were scared, and he helped. It's like, he's there. If you reach out, he's there every time, no matter what. Like, it's like, try it. He's there, and he'll reach out to you. But again, like, it's so hard when the cultural baggage and cultural grammar has been so anti-Christian. For some good reasons, right? We hear about the church, the priests in the church, and you see a lot of like preachers on TV trying to sell you snake oil, and Joel Osteen, who I'm not judging him, but like all of this like Tony Robbins Christianity, it's a hyper
Yeah.
superficial Christianity, right? And it's done so much to keep away people from really looking at the Bible, and really looking at it with genuine curiosity. And I think Jordan Peterson has played a huge role. He's almost like a John the
Oh, for
Baptist
sure.
figure, like
He's like the
repentant.
gateway drug to Christianity.
Yeah,
He was for me, man.
me too. And himself, he's
Yeah.
not a Christian. And I talked with a lot of Orthodox folks, and some of them aren't too keen on him. And they, it's like, did you want him just to be like, oh, I believe in God now, I'm a Christian? Like him struggling in real time in front of everybody with his faith, tears, the gnashing of teeth, everything that he's gone through. I think seeing it's like a portal. Like if he would just say, oh, I believe in God now, I don't think it would have the effect of watching him struggle with these ideas and his faith, and doing it in front of, we all have struggles with our faith, but to do it in front of everybody like that is
Mm,
powerful, and it
it's
continues to
tough.
have. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you should, because I did notice that with the Orthodox community, like some people are too tough on him. It's like, guys,
Yeah.
come on, be grateful. Like, do you know
Yeah.
how many people wouldn't even find Orthodoxy if it wasn't for Jordan? So what if
Hmm.
he doesn't, if he's not an Orthodox Christian? He might
Yeah.
be in the future.
Right.
I mean, C.S. Lewis, he was an atheist for 20 years. Seraphim Rose was a Hindu for 20 years. Because, like, you got to be careful of having that attitude of judging people for where they're at.
Hmm.
Because you would have been the same person who judged Seraphim Rose for being a
Hmm.
Hindu during his journey. And you
Yeah.
don't know how that would have played out. So, you very careful not to judge too harshly uh, with people, especially when they're clearly opening people's heart to Christ. And that's a
Hmm.
win, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's why I don't understand the quarrels when it comes to people are too focused on fighting between Protestant versus Catholic versus Orthodox. And these are important conversations, don't get me wrong, but I think it's division, man. Again, that's diabolical, I feel.
Yeah.
We're just trying to divide Christians when we should kind of unite, and we have bigger fish to fry, man. There's a big
Hmm.
war out there and we're kind of bickering amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's just something I wanted to throw out there because it's something that I have noticed. It's a human thing. It's not just an Orthodox or Christian or
Yeah.
Hindu thing. It's just humans in general. We kind of get too comfortable in our community, and then we start bickering and start arguing with
Yeah.
other worldviews. When, hey man, if people are bringing you closer to Christ, that's a win in my book. I think we should be
Hmm.
applauding that, and that's why I applaud Jordan Peterson. I
Yeah.
think
Likewise.
he's a hero for real.
Yeah. I'm not. There's a lot of apologetics and a lot of wonderful stuff online of people, arguing between Protestant and Catholic and Orthodoxy, and I'm just not. It's not my niche. I'm not interested in it. Like, you know what I'm saying? It
Mm,
just doesn't call me to that. And I think there are important distinctions to be made. But I'm
for
of the
sure.
mind that I think I would respect of a genuinely practicing Protestant and genuine in his faith, his or her faith, than a brother, an Orthodox brother that's going through the motions in a sense.
Yes.
Like you can
Yes.
make anything. And this is again, I think, going back to the Ten Commandments. The first commandment is have no God above me, right? So it's like, was he jealous God or whatnot? No, it's like if you invest your human desire in anything other than the mysterious infinite, right? In anything other than Christ, you're going to it's going to turn into an ideology. It will manifest into, it will capture you, capture your attention and your desire, and it will become an ideology, and you will not notice it. You become unaware that you're trapped in an ideology in a sense. And I think that that can be true of
Yes.
anything. Like you can make Orthodox an ideology. You can make anything an ideology.
Yeah,
So it's not an easy thing. It's, you know, developing discernment and finding your path is not easy. And Orthodox is, God, not easy at all. It's the hardest thing to do. To,
very,
you know,
it's
the
very difficult.
ascetic portion of it, that's something that's missing. You know, obviously from the psychedelic and that part of the community is like, there's this struggle, this ascetic struggle that you struggle with. You don't try to take a substance to ameliorate all of your struggles. You turn towards them, right? And the
Right.
across the, you know, open that door through your struggles is where you'll find, you know, your salvation in a sense. Like your
Mm,
you know, your biggest struggles are your biggest opportunity to find Christ. You have to trust Him. You have to
exactly.
trust.
And
Yeah,
we're gonna learn to lift people up, man, not just
yeah,
criticize. Because I do see that a lot against like, you know, a few Orthodox people or whatever. Not even just Orthodoxy, but a lot of certain Christians who will just spend way too much energy just attacking another sect of Christianity. When, okay, yes, let's just say that Catholicism is wrong for argument's sake, and obviously I'm resonate with Orthodoxy. It's why I'm here, and I was born Catholic. But they do a lot of things right as
mm-hmm.
well. They do some things that are better than the Orthodox Church, you know, in terms of like charity and, you know, building universities and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't mean therefore it's good, but we've got to be careful with only criticizing without lifting up the virtues, you know.
Yeah.
That was like a little pet peeve that I've had for the last few weeks.
You know,
It's
Christ
like,
says,
guys,
don't,
come on,
yeah, don't look at
because
the
like uh,
speck in your brother's eye when you have a log in yours. Like, you know,
100%, dude. Especially
yeah,
because when you got to understand, like, from the new age psychedelic Eastern religious atheist perspective, when you see this sort of bickering behavior, it's a turnoff, man. It
mm-hmm,
really is. So what
yeah,
you're doing by your behavior is actually you're repelling people away from Christ,
yep, yep,
and it's like, got to be careful with that. That's all.
yeah. You get, you know, catering to a certain audience. But no, I agree. I completely agree.
Because and
Yeah,
that's like where my kind of position is now. Because like I'm slowly but surely, you know, gonna help bridge people, you know, towards Christ. And I hope that they go towards Orthodoxy. But hey, you know, if they go towards Catholicism, whatever, man,
mm-hmm,
whatever works for you, as long as you're crossing that bridge, as long as you're opening your heart to Christ, I think that's really what matters at the end of the
yeah,
day. And then you can figure it out, you know, later.
mm-hmm, yeah, man, for sure. Yeah, and a couple minutes here, if you have, maybe we can kind of end with.
Why
Or,
even got me on this path.
oh, you broke up on me a little bit. Can you hear me?
Hang on, yeah, you just cut out. Oh, I was just
Yeah,
gonna say before, like, I think God did put me on this path to really understand the other side of the spectrum. Like I said, I went through every religion. Like you, when I go into something, I go balls deep, 100% commitment, and so I understand the psychology and the emotions behind these other communities. So my position right now, it's like I got to approach this very carefully, almost even like a Jordan Peterson-esque kind of way of exploring and not going too far of like, yes, I believe, like going
mm-hmm,
too hardcore. But actually, I was thinking about just starting a dedicated Christian channel so that I
yeah,
can do that, but also keep making content on my main channel and
yeah,
just planting seeds, man, planting seeds,
mm-hmm,
and
yeah,
maybe start off like kind of debunking New Age ideology and just maybe just a little thing here, a little thing there,
mm-hmm,
you know, because you got to open people's heart up so you can plant the soil instead of just straight out going for the fences like you're wrong,
yeah,
Christ is the truth and the only truth. It's a huge turn off, man. It
yeah,
is true, but sometimes you got to be careful with how you approach things, you know what I mean?
100%. No, I 100% agree. And I've had this idea that, you know, time is speeding up so rapidly now, where when, you know, we've had this history of the religious evolution of religions, right, over time, and, you know, Zoroastrian, Buddhism, you know, Hinduism, all that, and Christianity, right? I feel like individuals are going through the whole history of the evolution of humanity and religion in individual lifetimes. Like, I feel like that's happened with me and you. It's like you're going through like the last 2000 years in a lifespan, in a single lifespan, in a sense. It's really
I know.
really kind of strange, man, but it's a wonderful thing. So I guess we could, you know, we could end on that. What you were saying, you said you're going to, where are you going to take your YouTube? How has it been, you know, wrestling with what you're looking at now with building this identity of being kind of a psychedelic YouTuber, one of the most popular ones, and like Church of the Eternal Logos, David Patrick Henry, he had a channel that was pretty popular, and he kind of disregarded it all and started. Are you looking to do something like that? What's next for you?
Yes, I'm gonna continue my because he kind of just abandoned the channel and started a new one where I've kind of just brought on some Christians onto
Mm-hmm.
my main channel. People are like, "Whoa, what are you doing?" A lot of support though. Let me just say, I've had a lot of support. I've had a few Orthodox Christians kind of reach out, email me, and someone's gonna send me a whole bunch of books, and they've been very supportive. So it's all good. The beauty about having a YouTube channel for so long is I've learnt to build thick skin anyway. So it
Mm-hmm.
used to get to me a lot, whereas now I kind of go to that Jesus quote where he says, blessed are you when people persecute you and
Mm-hmm.
speak falsely against you because of me. So that's something I have to remind myself. It's a quote I go back to. It's like, this is part of the journey, man. Like, just because you're getting persecuted, it doesn't mean that's a bad thing. In fact, it's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
I just gotta not react to it. And that's why, when I've had a few people make videos about me and I don't name names, I don't want to get into the gossip
Mm-hmm.
world because it's demonic in nature. And it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
no, that's the game that they want you to play, and I'm not going to do it. So I'm going to
Yep.
continue my channel. Uh, I'd like to do like documentaries on culture and religion, theology, continue my podcast. I have a few people coming on actually to talk about more about this journey. I've got Elliot Hulse, who's
Mm-hmm.
he was like an ex New Age strong man, and now he's like a Catholic guy, and that's going to be probably the most controversial podcast I've released so far. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Look forward to it.
And
Actually,
yeah,
I'm
and
not familiar with him. Yeah.
oh yeah, you should check him out. He's
Yeah.
really good. And I'm going to actually, even Jonathan Peugeot, I reached out to him, and I might even have him on like maybe end of next month or something like that. So
Yeah.
fingers crossed.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be
For
awesome.
sure. Yeah.
And yeah, I do feel in my heart that I want to start like a dedicated Christian channel. I was thinking, because I got my main channel, which is Yourmatetom. I was thinking
Mm-hmm.
your brother Thomas. So it's like a
Mm,
level up. So I was like,
like
okay,
it.
yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, just kind of start there. So that way, that would be the channel where I can just freely speak about this kind of stuff. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, with your mate Tom, I'm planning to plant seeds. So I'm gonna be very. It's not that I'm afraid or anything. I'm honest. You ask me a question, I'm gonna answer honestly. But I also
Yeah.
have to be careful with how I approach this, because my intention is to help people cross that bridge, not
Mm-hmm.
to repel them. So it's not just
Yeah.
about speaking truth. You got to be very careful, know your crowd, and all that kind of stuff.
So that's Jonathan
But
was a
yeah, that's
big
it.
influence on me starting the channel. So quickly, so the Rooster's Crow podcast. So the story of Peter, who was Christ's closest disciple. Jesus was like, "Hey, you're going to deny me." He's like, "No, I will die for you." What do you mean? You're going to deny me before the rooster crows. You're going to deny me 3 times before the rooster crows. So when that happened, the rooster crowing was Peter's the worst day of his life and the best day of his life, right? And it was simultaneously the worst and the best days of his life, and it gave him the ability to repent, and it brought him closer to Christ, right? So the idea of the Rooster's Crow podcast was to find people that, like the Rooster's Crow, are singing caution, but are also giving pathways of hope. And
Wow.
I try to use the channel not to go over, beat people over the head with Christianity. So I'm very resonant to what you're talking about, is trying to find that line where you're not, because people are used to, Christ is the truth. Oh, my parents and grandparents told me that, dude. I see that on the televangelist preachers. They say that all the time. Oh, cool. You found that. Awesome. Like, so it's like find, finding that thin line, that discernment in trying to balance there. I wish you nothing but to success and well wishes and blessings on your journey, man. I'm interested in to follow and to join you for sure.
Yeah, likewise, brother. And I think it's very powerful again that you've gone through this Eastern meditation psychedelic realm. I think not that it's necessarily recommended for people to purposely go off the path and become the lost sheep,
Yeah.
but if you do happen to be the lost sheep, then you have a lot of advantages that the person who was born Christian doesn't have.
Hmm.
and who doesn't know how to speak to people outside the Christian community. So I think we're in a very special place, man. I'm
Yeah,
looking
man.
forward to. I'm just beginning this, you know what I mean? And like just now, kind of, especially going to liturgy, I'm way more comfortable opening up and being
Hmm.
kind of less afraid of this kind of stuff. And yeah, it's a beautiful journey, and I'm excited to see how this unfolds, and just looking forward to continuously researching, reading scripture, prayer, and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah,
thanks
man.
for having me on, brother.
Yep.
Before I go, what book would you recommend? Like an orthodox
Um,
book
man, it's a big question.
for someone
I
like me, maybe who's been
uh,
into the Eastern
Christ the
religions.
Eternal Tao, without a doubt.
Okay, all right.
I can, if it's easier for me to get a copy, from the States here, I can send me information. I'll send you a copy.
Oh, sweet,
Yeah,
man. I
for
appreciate
sure.
that.
Yeah.
Because yeah,
And
the ones I've seen online, man, they're like $150. I'm like,
yeah,
man, this is like, yeah, it's really expensive.
I
But
started, I started my channel with it. So I have go on my channel and look at the playlists. I have
I'll
Christ the
check it
Eternal
out.
Tao playlist. And then you can see my channel, like the process of me realizing the truth of Christianity from philosophy. I like, you can see it through it. And it's kind of crazy. So, but yeah, I'll see if I can send you that book, dude. And maybe we can do a part two or something down the road, man.
100%, man. I'm always open for this kind of stuff. So
All
good
right,
to be a
man.
part of the community. That
Yes.
the Ortho Bros have been awesome. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Glad to
I'm
have you,
very
man.
happy. Yeah, thanks, brother.
All right,
Good to
brother.
be
Take
home.
care. Yeah.
All
See ya.
right, you too, man. All the
Bye.
best.
God bless.
Peace.